Senate Committee on Environment, Climate, and Legacy. We do have a quorum for the record, and we do have a bill up, Senate File 1152 first, Senator Oumou Verbeten on the Como Park Zoo and Conservatory appropriation. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy to present this bill to you all today. Senate File 1152 is an appropriation request for Como Zoo and Conservatory for $1,750,000 in fiscal year 26 and fiscal year 27. Just a little bit more about Como Park Zoo and Conservatory. It has been celebrated as the most visited cultural attraction in Minnesota with as many as 2.2 million visitors a year. Como is free to visit. It is inclusive, it provides access to all, and whether it's creating fun experiences that deepen knowledge and a sense of connection, or just making sure it's easy and welcoming for all people to visit, Como is truly always an inviting and inspiring place. And we get visitors from all over the state, so 16% come from St. Paul, 42% from the metro, 22% from greater Minnesota, and 16% from out of state. The Arts and Culture Heritage Funds really have allowed Como to meet the growing needs of the 21st century audience while preserving the historical character that visitors value. In addition, funds have been leveraged with private support through Como Friends, which is the nonprofit partner of Como, and programs that feature Como in the community and residency program, public engagement events. Those include things like Little Explorers, senior strolls, and sensory-friendly days, also special exhibits, garden preservation, habitat renewal, and music in the nature series. These are all great programs. They inspire learning and really help people connect with the natural world. I would also encourage committee members to visit Como Zoo if you ever have time. I'm lucky that I live walking distance from there, so I get to see it all the time when walking the dog, and there are truly lots of families and folks who are coming from all over, and it's just so great that we have access to this free, amazing space right here in St. Paul. So with that, I'd like to introduce Erica Prosser, who's the Deputy Director and Interim Director of Como Park Zoo and Conservatory, and she can share some more details about this request and the work that Como Zoo and Conservatory does in our community, the region, and the state of Minnesota.
Thank you, Senator, and welcome, Ms. Prosser, to the committee. Just state your name for the record and go ahead and get started.
Hello, my name is Erica Prosser. I am the Deputy Director, and I'm 5 days in my role as Interim Director at Como Park Zoo and Conservatory. So I hope you'll have some grace with me today. I'm very happy to be here to talk about the impact of the legacy funding and how we've used that at Como Park Zoo and Conservatory. I think we're having some technical difficulties with the PowerPoint presentation, or you have it in your packet, so you can.
Is this the one you're going to be going through?
Can you open that up for me?
That way, members can just follow along.
Yep, that's it.
All right, perfect. Members, if you have this one in your packets.
Perfect. All right, so Como Park Zoo and Conservatory continues to serve as a treasured resource for all Minnesotans, inspiring curiosity and connection to the wonders of the natural world. Over a century after its founding, Como remains the state's most visited cultural destination, offering free admission, a family-friendly atmosphere, and accessible non-formal education programs. You already shared some of the geographic information about our visitors. 21% of our visitors identify as Black or African American, 13% Hispanic, 21% Asian, 35% white, 2% American Indian, and 8% who identify as two or more races. 59% of the students in our programs at Como Park Zoo and Conservatory qualify for free and reduced lunch. So Support from the Legacy Amendments Art and Cultural Heritage Fund has enabled Como to provide inclusive, enriching programs and enhancements that celebrate arts, culture, and history, ensuring meaningful experiences for communities across Minnesota. I'll go into some of those programs now. Music and nature. Como Park Zoo and Conservatory connects visitors with local artists through diverse music programs. We have Groovin' in the Garden that is an 8-week summer concert series on the conservatory's front lawn, while Music Under the Glass offers a really magical opportunity during the winter to experience the Marjorie McNeely Conservatory at night. The Summer Music Mondays showcases strolling musicians throughout the zoo grounds, and it creates a really lively atmosphere. These events are free. They feature Minnesota artists. They take place outside of our standard public hours, and they're introducing new audiences in a welcoming, accessible way. We have a variety of public engagement programs that are funded through Legacy, focused on connections, access, reach, engagement, and storytelling. These programs emphasize equity, inclusion, and virtual learning, providing participants with an opportunity to explore, create, connect in a welcoming environment. We have sensory-friendly mornings. So for our visitor, coming to the zoo, there's a lot of sights and sounds. It can be quite overwhelming, especially on days with high visitors. We have partnered with the Autism Society of Minnesota to provide sensory-friendly mornings. On these mornings, we have done a variety of things to provide sensory-friendly engagement with our visitors. We have visual schedule boards that help folks plan their routes around the zoo, and step-by-step instructions that give them a heads up about what they might be experiencing and where they might want to visit in the zoo. We have our Little Explorers program that provides age-appropriate, hands-on educational activities with interactive story times. This is on Thursdays from 10 to 12, and we do that year-round. We have an ASL interpreting program. On Thursday mornings, we have an ASL interpreter that joins our Little Explorers program. They rotate around habitats at the zoo. They provide interpretation to the Blaze Sparky Seal Show and sea lion training. This is a great opportunity for our deaf and hard of hearing visitors to fully engage with activities at the zoo. For our 55-year-old and better visitors, we have the Senior Stroll program, which happens twice a month on Tuesday mornings. I think there's an evening option sometimes as well. It provides a quieter time for visitors to experience the zoo. We have SAFE stations. So SAFE stands for Saving Animals from Extinction. This program, we are partnered with the Association of Zoos and Aquariums that has identified 11 species that are on the brink of extinction, that require species-specific programming, including African lions, African penguins, the wood turtle, chinchillas, orangutans, snow leopards, and a few more. But we provide programming that are education stations that gives information to our visitors about these species, the activities that we're doing to using our audiences to save the species, I guess, is the way I'll frame that one. We also have a Como and community events. This is where we bring Como out into the community to try to make sure that folks are aware of the programs and opportunities that we have at the zoo. So we bring kind of a kit out to different open houses, fairs, festivals, community events, et cetera, where we share interesting facts about the zoo and what activities we have on our schedule. This is really popular, and we get a lot of requests for that. I'm just going to go through a couple more here. One of my favorite programs that we fund through legacy dollars, Partners Up funding that we have from our DEED Youth at Work grant. We have an apprentice program now at both the zoo and conservatory, where we're providing 2 years of paid training in zookeeping and horticulture to help young folks prepare for careers in these fields. The Right Track program as a whole supports over 1,000 youth annually and provides career exposure and workforce readiness programs for those that have barriers to employment. Lastly, in this engagement area, I'll point out we've been getting more savvy with our social media. If you are not friends with us on all of the social media platforms, do so. We have a team that provides really funny content, including the tiger van. If you haven't seen that video, check it out. It's really funny. But it's another way for us to engage folks with giving them information about, what our animal collection is, what programming we have, and other opportunities to engage with events at the zoo. Our legacy funding also supported some special exhibits over the last year. The Glass in Flight exhibit was created by renowned artist Alexei Havari. He brought a stunning collection of intricate glass sculptures to our campus that celebrated the beauty and grace of flight through meticulously crafted glass pieces depicting butterflies, dragonflies, and other winged creatures. It was quite magnificent. We also had another special exhibit we had was the Mission Safari Maze. The Mission Safari Maze explored the vast biodiversity of the safari. It was a bilingual, multi-layer adventure maze that helped discover in some things that seemed insignificant in the wildlife, how they play such an important role in our human survival. We also funded a few exhibits in our exhibit gallery with our legacy funding. The Monarchs and Milkweed exhibit, Story of Survival, took our visitors on a journey into the world of butterflies and plants, highlighting the complex relationship between monarchs and milkweed. I really wish I had the slides up. And then lastly, we had an exhibit called What is Compassion? This exhibit was created in partnership with a local artist, Harper Steinbeck, and the Compassion Museum that was meant to have our visitors reflect on the meaning of compassion. It was an interactive art installation that provided a unique and immersive experience, encouraging our guests to pause, explore their emotions, share personal reflections in a welcoming space. And lastly, we had 2 habitat renewal projects. The first being the Marine and Mammal Building that we used the funding to provide new tanks and public experiences for both our guests and a better animal environment that helped make a better connection, inspiring our public to value the presence of living things. The work has been completed, and it's quite cool to look at, so I hope you can all come out. And lastly, we used funding for garden preservation. The art of gardening will be on full display when the weather is a little bit better. The Lily Reflection Pool featuring the historical Victorian water platters, which first appeared in Como Park in the late 1880s. The Marjorie McNeely Conservatory has been a historical landmark since 1915, and preserving the great staircase back to the artist's original design was completed, and we will finish up planting of that area in 2025. Also quite stunning. You can come take a look. So that's just an overview of some of the things that we've done with legacy funding, and we really appreciate the support that we received, and look forward to continuing to be able to provide these opportunities for our visitors from around the state. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you're the only one I have signed up to testify. Is there anyone else that would like to comment on this bill? Seeing none, member questions? Any members have a question? Senator Green?
Thank you. First question would be, you want 1.75 for 2 years. Is that an increase from last year? And if so, how much?
Ms. Proser?
Yes. Chair Herr, Senator, that is a slight increase from what we've asked in previous years. I believe it's 25,000 more than our previous ask.
Okay.
Senator Green?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Then the other question I have is, I do like Como Park, by the way. I brought my kids there when they were younger, and I want to get my grandkids there. But most of the projects that you talked about don't really seem to involve any new animals. Is there, what is the biggest attraction there? Because when we went there, it was the animals, but it seems like you get into more diverse things instead of that. Is it still, will some of the money still be going into maybe new species and stuff that come to the zoo?
Ms. Proser?
Senator Herr, Senator Green, I don't know the answer to that question. What I can say is that it is standard practice for zoos that are accredited by the American Zoological Association to review your collection plan, the collection of animals, and we're due to update that plan now. We are separately we separately have a bonding request in for our cats building. That is a big investment that would enhance the user experience for those visiting, the cat collection.
Okay, thanks.
Senator Green? Any other questions for members? Seeing none, I would just, Senator Herr, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I just want to let folks know that I hand the gavel to co-chair Icorn today. So
Thank you.
Icorn is the chair of this committee.
Thank you. And my question for you, Ms. Poser, I'm just curious where your other funding streams come from. Do you receive any other support from the state? I know we see you for legacy quite often and for bonding. Do you know any? I know you're new. If you can't get it, you can get back to us later. But I'd be curious if you're aware of any other state support you guys receive, or where kind of those funding streams come from.
You're Senator Icorn. You're right. I'm new, and the funding at Como Zoo and Conservatory is a little more complicated than some of the other divisions in parks. We receive legacy dollars. We go after bonding funding. We have a very strong partnership with Como, with our Como Friends, our nonprofit partner, and we have revenue sources that come in for, zoo rentals, things like that.
Can I?
Oh,
Yes, Senator.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to add that I am carrying 3 bills for Como Zoo this year. So there is the bonding request. There's also some really great geothermal work that's happening, and that'll be a request through the Energy Committee. But outside of those, I'm not aware of other state funding that Como Zoo receives. And if I could just add too, that the increase here is also for inflation and just the higher cost of services. And then just wanted to add to Senator Green, to your question, I think a lot of what Como Zoo has done is to create some programs so that they can get more folks in to visit the space, see the animals who weren't sort of able to do that before. I think like the partnership with Autism Minnesota is really important. Having those sensory friendly days, the senior strolls to get some of our older Minnesotans in, or the little explorers to get our youngest Minnesotans in. So just always trying to find creative ways to make sure that everyone has access to the Como Zoo because it's such a great place.
Thank you for adding that. And yeah, part of my reason for asking is whether fair or not, you guys often get compared to the Minnesota Zoo, and I think it's helpful that you guys are free to go to. It feels like you're more accessible. I realize you guys are very different, but similar in some areas, and I like the Como as well. My sister actually worked there when she was in college, so it's got a special spot for me. I've been there several times, brought my kids there a handful of times, so I also like the Como Zoo. So you guys do some good work. Welcome aboard. Happy to have you there. I don't see any other questions from members, so with that, Senator Verbeten, if you have any closing comments, go ahead. I assume.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just again, think this is just a wonderful place that we have access to, that so many people, as you said, can come to Como Zoo. It's free to access the space, and they're doing really amazing work to make sure that we're reaching not just like all Minnesotans, but even folks outside of the state to visit this place. So I hope you'll find the funds to support Como Zoo.
Thank you very much. With that, Senate File 1152 will be laid over for possible inclusion. Next up, we have the State Arts Board, the Legacy Arts Grants Overview.
Mr. Chair and members, technology is not my strong suit. So
Take a minute if you want. We do have, I believe, is this going to be your presentation?
it is.
This one? If you're unable to get it, we can follow along with this like we did the last presentation, but go ahead and take just a moment to try to get it.
I think with your staff support, it's going to work.
This one.
Wrong cord. Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right, perfect. Looks like it's working. So just before you guys start speaking, just make sure to state your name for the record. Go ahead and start when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Icorn. Thank you, Chair Herr. Thank you, members. I'm Sue Jens. I'm the Executive Director of the Minnesota State Arts Board, and I have a bit of a cold, so forgive me for the raspy voice. I am joined today by Nicole DeBoer, who is the Executive Director of Southwest Minnesota Arts Council. She will be speaking a little bit later in our presentation. We really appreciate the chance to be stewards of legacy funds and appreciate the chance to give you a brief, pretty high-level overview of our work and our impact today. And I know that we're going to have some time for questions, so we really appreciate that. First and foremost, and I hope you felt this today, on Minnesota Arts Advocacy Day, Minnesotans care about the arts. They care deeply about the arts. This is a state that has had a long history of supporting the arts through public support. For more than 100 years, we have had a state arts agency, now called the Minnesota State Arts Board, to take state resources, divide them across the state, and build up a strong arts infrastructure. We are an executive branch agency. Our board members are appointed by the governor, approved by the Senate. Our mission and our structure are all in state statute. So we don't decide how we operate. State law tells us that. Our mission is on the screen that you can mostly see, and it's very broad, and that's intentional because in the arts, one size does not fit all. What might be interesting to me might not be interesting to someone else, and so our goal really is to provide experiences that are meaningful to all Minnesotans. I've copied onto the screen just some of the key duties that are in state statute. I've paraphrased them a little bit, but first and foremost, we are responsible for providing financial support. We have long received general fund dollars, and since 2010, we've been receiving legacy dollars to fund the arts all across the state. We serve as the fiscal agent for the network of regional arts councils. Those are legislatively mandated grants, and Ms. DeBoer is going to be talking about those. Unlike the Como Zoo and others that you're going to hear from, we don't offer programming. We don't have classes. We don't have a venue. We don't have animals. We are a service organization. We provide financial support and services to strengthen and build up the arts community. We have relationships with a number of other state agencies, responsibilities spelled out in statute, and we manage the state's public art program. Those are funded through capital investment. Primarily, you are thinking about dollars, and so I wanted to give you a snapshot about dollars. I hope you can see the top of the slide. The 24-25 revenue to the Arts Board, because we are a state agency, we are 100% publicly funded. The little tiny silver slice is federal funds that come to us through the National Endowment for the Arts. The yellow colored slice is our general fund appropriations for the biennium. And the very large green slice that we are very grateful for is the legacy funds for this biennium, $97.9 million. We're going to follow that green slice onto the next slide. And this is how the dollars, the legacy dollars, are divided up, and this comes out of the appropriations law. So I'll start again with the yellow slice. That is our administrative funds that we use for grants management, technical support. That's 5%. You've been allowing us to use 5%. The blue slice is the regional arts councils. Those legislatively mandated grants are about 30% of the funds. The little red slice was another legislatively mandated grant that you made to us in '24, and I can respond to that in the questions if you want. And then the green slice is the funding that we use for our competitive grant programs. And I will be talking about those in just a second. So we offer 6 competitive grant programs, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about process because we are, as I mentioned, a grant maker, and so people wonder about how do we decide and who do we fund. We, in January of each year, post our calendar of grants, grant programs. There are 6 of them. We post the calendar in January before the fiscal year starts so that people will have plenty of time to learn about them and to plan a proposal. That calendar also includes the month when the applications will be awarded, the grants will be awarded, and also the grant period. Again, we want to give people a lot of time to plan. We use online materials mostly. We do a lot of webinars and workshops and sessions that are interactive online. Our staff also does a great deal of one-on-one support, answering questions, helping people understand those programs. This slide has a lot of information on it. I'm not going to talk about everything, but I'm going to do some highlights here. So one of the real strengths about our process is that I don't decide who we're going to fund, and my staff doesn't decide who we're going to fund. We recruit more than 450 Minnesotans from all across the state of Minnesota who review the applications that we receive. Our staff does the first pass, deciding which are eligible, which are complete, and then we assign those applications to those 450 individuals, all of whom have some sort of background in the arts or in nonprofit management. We want their perspectives as we make decisions. Those 450 people last year spent more than 9,000 hours reviewing grant applications and helping us make decisions. They score the applications, they discuss them in an open public meeting that is televised so people can watch. And then their final scores are used to come up with a list, a ranked list, that is referred to our board, and the board approves the work that all of those volunteers from across the state have done. It's a very transparent process, we believe. It's based on the criteria that you see on the right-hand side of the screen. The top 5 criteria are used in the program that we offer general support to arts organizations. And really there we're looking at the overall organization, the health of the organization and its ability to serve Minnesotans. The 3 bullets at the bottom of that slide are the criteria we use in our project grant programs. First and foremost, is this an artist or an organization that's committed to providing arts programming to Minnesotans? If I want to play the guitar in my basement, that's fine, but I don't need state funding to do that. But if I'm a singer-songwriter and I want to tour the state and share my music with Minnesotans, maybe an arts board grant is an appropriate thing to request. We look at the feasibility of the plan. Does it make sense? Can it be completed with the budget that they're thinking about? Can it be completed in the timeline? And then the last thing we look at is, will underserved populations benefit from that program? And there are lots of ways to define underserved, but we take the language in the Legacy Amendment about arts access very seriously. And we want dollars to reach as many places, and especially to people who might not have had opportunities to be involved in the arts in the past. The last thing that I will talk about is, again, a little bit more about our grant program. So here are the 6 programs that we're offering. And I don't know if you're seeing the captioning over the chart at the bottom, but we review more than 1,500 or 1,600 applications a year. Again, those 450 some people do that. And we make nearly 1,000 grants a year. We're only able to fund about 58% of the grants. So we say no to more than 40% of our applicants. The demand is there. We know if we had more funding, we could certainly fund more projects. But we do stretch the dollars as far as we can. I wanted to give you examples of 3 projects that we funded in the last year, just to give you a snippet of some of those 1,000 things. And I'll start with the photo at the bottom. It was the Festival de la Calaveras. For somebody who does not speak Spanish, I would say it's Day of the Dead. And it was a celebration in Minnesota, a free 3-day celebration to highlight Latina artists, to uplift the cultural traditions and the art forms of the Latina community. It had music, it had spoken word, it had dance, it had art-making experiences for kids and families. And it was a way for someone like me to learn about the culture and to learn about those important traditions that are really so beautiful and so colorful. The photo above it is a little hard to see because it's a beautiful black and white photo, but it's the Chamber Music Live organization. They're based in Houston, Minnesota. I don't know how many of you know where Houston is. It's down in the southeast corner. It's a town of 983 people. And they received a grant to do a 2-week chamber music concert series in and around the community of Houston. And one of the things they said about their project is that they have a lot of older adults in their community who maybe don't come to the Twin Cities to hear chamber music, but they really love that kind of music. And so their feedback to us is that these concerts fed the souls of their community, that they were an exceptional experience in their rural backyard. And then the top photo is an arts education grant of ours that we made to the New Native Theater. It's a St. Paul organization. And it was a free summer theater camp where kids could learn theater, learn how to act, learn how to do movement and all the things you do in theater, and probably the backstage and the production work. They learned storytelling. They learned about mask making and puppetry. And it was all based on Native traditional stories. And at the end of the summer camp, the kids created their own show and they performed it for their parents and for their teachers and for others. And I picked out these 3 out of the 1,000 that I could have told you today, in part because none of these organizations and none of these activities existed before there was a legacy fund. So it says a lot about the new opportunities that are available because this additional new funding is available. So I'm going to stop talking about our competitive grants at this moment. I'll hand off to Ms. DeBoer with your permission, and then we'll wrap up after she's finished.
Thank you, Ms. DeBoer. Welcome to the committee. Just state your name for the record and go ahead and get started.
Hama Takayape. Hello, my relatives. I'm Nicole DeBoer. I'm the Executive Director of the Southwest Minnesota Arts Council. We are officed out of Marshall, Minnesota, but we do a lot of road traveling because we serve 18 counties and 2 sovereign nations in the southwest corner of the state. Thank you for having me here today. In 1976, the Minnesota Legislature directed the Arts Board to establish a network of regional arts councils to stimulate local arts development so that there would be arts opportunities in every single area of the state. And there are 11 regional arts councils, as you can see on the map on the slide. You might wonder why. That is because originally there were programs within regional development commissions. All have since separated, and we have all become standalone organizations. And one of that would be my region, which is Southwest, is actually 6W, 6E, and 8. Large geography, not a ton of population compared to other areas of the state. Minnesota statutes define a regional arts council as an autonomous grassroots organization designated by the Arts Board to make final decisions on the use of state appropriations for local or regional arts development. All of our councils, again, are nonprofit organizations. We have our own boards of directors made up of individuals who live in our regions. We conduct needs assessments on a regular basis. In fact, ours conducts one every single year. And we develop programs and services that are tailored to meet the needs of and the opportunities in our region that are based on the results of those needs assessments. We develop and submit a biennial plan to the Arts Board several months before the biennium begins. Those plans are reviewed by a committee in open public meetings, and then the Arts Board approves them. As partners in this work, we have frequent communications with the Arts Board. We have a financial reconciliation, and we submit reports on our activities and our use of the funds. I mentioned that each council decides on what grant programs it will offer based on our needs assessment. We also align our programs to the intent of the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, so we look at that as well. On this slide, we've listed some of the common kinds of grant programs that all of the councils offer. Those are typical. My organization offers 12 different programs, 12 different grant programs that seek to support all constituents and in all different ways. So an example of that is we offer a grant program simply called Art Project. And it's for arts organizations or nonprofits who are focused primarily on the arts to produce an art project that will impact their community. We offered the Art Project Grant, which is for up to $7,000 that they can apply for. In fact, last year we awarded 93 of these grants in our region. But we also offer the little brother of that, which is only for up to $1,000. And that is for like an immediate small need that an arts organization might have that comes up. Like we have the opportunity to have a touring company come in, but we have late notice. So we are just looking for a small amount of money to assist with this. Because our charge is to develop artists and arts organizations in our region, we also offer various services to build the capacity of the arts community. We've listed some of the common services that the councils provide. You'll see one of the bullets is art exhibitions. In my region, we have a gallery. It is always showcasing someone who has received a grant from us as an artist. So we don't just bring in outside of the state type artists. We are showcasing one of our local artists that's received monies from us. And also that is most often, 95% of the time, it is their only solo show that they've had in their lifetime. And they may be artists that have been working in the community for years and years, but have never been able to have a solo show. Our council offers also services that come out in our needs assessment And one of those things that they often say is that they need the opportunity to network and learn at the same time at an event. So we offer some education that offers networking, because in rural communities, people need to get together, not only to know who are the players in that field, but also to do some strategic planning. An example of that would be a gathering of area small theaters, so that they can plan 2 or 3 years ahead what shows they are planning to do, so they don't overlap and do the same productions in the same small range of communities. Thank you.
Great. Mr. Chair, by your leave, I will finish up. Thank you. So we've given you high-level information, we've given you brief information, we've given you a lot of information, a lot of numbers. We leave you with this last slide, in part because you're seeing 2 of us here, but really, if you imagine the fullness of the network, there are the 2 of us, there are our staffs, there are the 500-plus Regional Arts Council board members and our advisors, Minnesotans who make the decision about how they think their taxpayer arts-funded dollars should go. It's the thousands of grantees and a really impressive number of almost 25 million people who participated in those activities in the last biennium. Since we're not finished with this biennium, we don't have new numbers, but we'll certainly get those to you as soon as we can. We work very hard to be a transparent system, to be a merit-based system, trying to invest the dollars in the best projects and programs and organizations and artists that we can. We're proud of the fact that we're very citizen-driven, and we appreciate the chance to be these stewards of these legacy dollars. They make such a difference in every community across the state. We hope that you will be able to give us strong support again. We don't actually have a dollar amount requested yet. We're working with the governor's office on that. I think some of you know that the state statute says that 47% of the available funds would be distributed to the Arts Board and Regional Arts Councils, and we're waiting for the economic forecast to find out what that number might be for this coming 2 years. So we'll get that to you as soon as we get the word from the governor's office after the forecast comes out. We really appreciate your time. We appreciate the hard choices you are going to make, but we want you to know that we take our role terribly seriously and manage these dollars in the best way we can to serve all Minnesotans. So thank you for your time, and we will be happy to respond to questions if you have them.
Thank you. With that, are there any questions from members for the State Arts Board? Senator Green?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think this would be to Ms. Jens. I was looking through the projects that you have, and some of them that you're putting out there and operating and support get to be pretty high. Is there a limit on the amount of the grants that you give out, or do you just look at each individual one? Because there's a couple in here for over $1 million, some for just over 800,000. So I'm just wondering what the criteria is.
Ms. Jens?
Thank you, Chair Eichhorn. Senator Green, in the operating support program, we allocate a certain percentage of our grant funds available to that program, and then all of the organizations that are reviewed and receive scores that are high enough will get a portion of that money, and that portion is based in part on their budget. So a larger organization might get a larger grant, but it's also based on their scores against those 5 criteria. And so a small organization could get a larger grant than its budget would otherwise allow for because it has high scores in engagement or in public benefit. We generally are providing maybe 2 to 3% of the budget for a really large organization. And for a small organization, our grants often represent 15 to 20% of their budgets. So we have scaled the way we allocate those dollars so that we can invest more in smaller organizations. And in the project grants, this might have been part of your question as well. In the project grants, we do have an upper limit on grant funds. Most of the project grants will top out at $35,000, except for a grant to an individual artist, and that tops out at $10,000.
Senator Green?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And that brings me to, I guess I can skip the project grants because that was one of my questions, but we'll go to the individual grants. Now, for years, these grants were small, like $1,000, and if they got over 1,000, they kind of stuck out. But you've got a limit of $10,000, and I think that your testifier talked about grants that top out at 7, but there's very few in here that I see and that are under 7,000. But there's many of them that are 10,000, the limit. And so I'm wondering what caused that change from getting out to smaller grants to individuals to appropriating most of them. And I think I'm pretty safe at saying most of them at the $10,000 limit.
Ms. Jens?
Thank you, Chair Icorn. Senator Green, I don't mean to contradict you, but we had a maximum of $8,000 for individual grants for a number of years. And then I think it was just before COVID, we increased it to $10,000. So the Arts Board has generally been making $8,000 grants to individual artists, and then we raised it a bit because things get more expensive. And it is common for an artist, actually it is common for an organization to ask for the maximum amount that they can ask for. In most cases, our grant is not paying for their full project. They might have other sources of revenue, or they might have earned income. You know, if it's a theater artist, they might have ticket sales. But it's quite common for our grantees or our applicants to ask for the maximum that they are allowed to ask for.
Senator Green?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And you may have maxed them out at 8,000, but I've looked through many of these, and there used to be, well, here's your list. There's quite a few in here. It used to be way thicker than this, and you get a lot smaller grants. So it's like you've upped the amount and reduced the amount of people you send them to. But I'm just only going to ask one more because I still have to go through some of these. But the comment was made that you try to get out to individuals. These are individuals. So, you stated that that this is only a portion of what they need, but these are individual grants to some pretty small projects that, for instance, you said that you'd given them out to maybe lower income people that might need it, but I don't really see all of those fitting into that category. And this one, and I did look up this person, and I'm not going to mention her name here, but she appears to be a professor at one of the Minnesota colleges, and she got $10,000 to do her third book of poems. And so when you talk about giving money out to people who wouldn't otherwise be able to do it, I didn't, of course, look up every single person in here, and I assume some of them are lower income, but not all of them are. And so it almost seems like doing the $10,000 is an easier way out than going through more projects, and I hope that's not the case. But it also seems to contradict the fact that you're looking to lower income people for the grants. So do all these go through the State Arts Board, or are some of these to these individual folks in this project, are they from the regional arts boards?
Ms. Jens?
Thank you, Chair Icorn. If you're looking at the list of grants that's published on our website, Senator Green, then those are all Arts Board grants. We do post, you can go back to, I think it's 2002, and every grant we've made since 2002 is posted on our website. Your comment about somebody being a faculty member at a college, the reality in Minnesota is that many artists cannot support themselves only as being a practicing artist. They have other jobs, they have other ways of earning income. And I won't speak for Ms. DeBoer, but as we've traveled around the state in greater Minnesota, many artists will teach at a college or teach in a school, but what they really want to do is write poetry as well, or they want to compose songs, or they want to be filmmakers. And so the funding they receive from us helps them with their own personal creative practice, separate from whatever they might be doing as their day job, if you will, to support their family and to make their mortgage payments and make sure that they can pay their bills. So we wish that every artist in Minnesota could afford to live just as an artist, but most of them, you talk about the gig economy, most artists are in the gig economy, and they're doing projects and looking for support in a lot of different ways.
Senator, any additional questions from members? Senator Her.
Thank you, Mr. Zujan and Mr. Bohr for being here. I think last week last week sometime, a question came up and we're wondering about agency that may utilize other larger, or group or individual that may utilize other larger agency as pass-through, and that the agency that the pass-through agency sometimes get grant from state arts boards. What would your advice be in terms we check on our legislation or on our laws here doesn't really strict that that process. So is there a internal rulemaking or some sort? Can you clarify that so that we maybe inform those who are approaching us for legislation for the direct appropriation that may use a pass-through agency?
Great.
Ms. Jens.
Thank you, Chair Icorn. Thank you, Chair Her, for that question. When the Legacy Amendment was passed, let me say that backwards. Before the Legacy Amendment was passed, we were only funding artists and arts organizations that had their own 501c3. Because of the Legacy Fund, we have broadened that, and so we can fund public entities, we can fund something called a fiscal sponsor, who then passes the money through their books to another organization. And we've been doing that now for, 16, 17 years that the Legacy Amendment has been in place, in part because sometimes an artist or a small group wants to do a project, but they don't necessarily want to incorporate and form a board and have to have all the carrying costs of an organization. So we do fund organizations that have fiscal sponsors. I think your question, Senator Her, if I can interpret, is also about organizations that are coming directly to you for funding rather than coming to the Arts Board for funding. And it is a question that we think about a lot. Our preference would be that they come to us rather than you directly. And it's for some of the reasons that I've talked about today, that we have criteria. We announce those ahead of time so that anybody who is eligible to apply can apply. We do that review in an open and we hope fair and transparent process. And if someone is coming to you asking you to sponsor a bill, there might be another 40 or 50 great projects in your district that you don't know about. And so part of it is just about people not really understanding the legislative process and not knowing, well, maybe I should go to my legislator and ask them to sponsor a bill for me. We would much prefer that they come to us and we have them go through our process. The other thing that I will share just for you to think about is that some of the legislatively mandated grants we've seen are quite large. And unless you continue to fund that organization, you, the legislature, continue to fund that organization at that level, it kind of destabilizes them because they're not going to have that money the next year, which is in part to Senator Green's question about if we're trying to make small but meaningful grants to as many people as possible, then maybe they're not going to be dependent on state funds. If one year they don't get a grant from us, it's not going to force them to go out of business or lay off staff. That's never our goal. And so to the extent that you feel comfortable, we would really ask you to send those folks to us, and we will help them submit an application, and we will help them get through our process as best we can.
Senator Her.
I think that's good enough answer.
Perfect. Any additional questions? Seeing none, just want to thank you guys for coming today to present to us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, members.
Next up, we are going to have the Minnesota Citizens for the Arts presentation. We're going to have Sarah Fossen, the executive director from that organization. Welcome to the committee. Just go ahead and state your name for the record and go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Chair Icorn, members of the committee. My name is Sarah Fossen. All right. Thank you again for having me. I'm Sarah Fossen, Executive Director of Minnesota Citizens for the Arts. We are the statewide nonprofit dedicated to advocating for the strong, vibrant, and economically powerful arts sector in Minnesota. I hope that I know some of you were able to stop by today for our big arts rally in the Rotunda. We had hundreds of advocates from every corner of the state who are excited to be here to say thank you for all the work that you do as part of this legacy committee and all of the great work that's happening across the state. So it was a pretty exciting day. But I also wanted to be here to thank you for this opportunity to speak today about something that's not just enriching our communities, but also driving our economy. We know that arts make the life better, but today I'm here to show you how they also make Minnesota's economy a lot stronger. And to fully understand that impact, we actually at Minnesota Citizens for the Arts worked with the McKnight Foundation, the State Arts Board, our 11 regional arts councils, the local arts organizations, in order to conduct the most comprehensive economic impact study of its kind. Led by Americans for the Arts, the national study examined 395 communities across all 50 states. And I don't have a fancy PowerPoint, but we do have a couple handouts for you. And I have to admit, we all know that economic impact studies are not the most exciting things, and we're arts, so we're supposed to be a little bit more fun. So I'm going to go through these a little quicker than normal, so it's also not my favorite subject, but it's exciting results. So on your handout, you'll just see, it's one of those primer kind of things, the what is economic impact, for those in the audience. This could have been a slide, a PowerPoint, but it's just the kind of what is economic impact. And so it's interesting, of course, when you're thinking about arts. I'm not going to go through this, but when you're thinking about arts and culture, it is kind of exciting to think about because it's how money moves around and grows in a community. So when someone buys a theater ticket or a concert ticket, that money doesn't stop at a theater. It spreads throughout the local environment and the economy. It pays the artist, the stage crew, the restaurant down the street, the hotel for visiting guests, the parking attendant, or even the babysitter. It creates jobs, supports business, generates tax revenue that funds schools and roads and essential services. Do we have a drum roll anywhere? All right, there we go. There's some of my people. So what we got from all of that research is this slide. Sorry, it's been a long day. This is what you get, is through all of this research, what we heard back was that our economic impact of the arts and culture sector is $1.6 billion in economic activity each year and 138,000 jobs. And so what do we find from that? It's not just passion, it's profit. And it's not just culture, it's commerce. And so, again, I'm not here to convince you to love theater. If you don't like theater, fine. But as an industry sector, arts and culture in Minnesota is a huge industry. And when we also look at the bottom part, so when you look at it as an industry, so the top part is just the nonprofit arts and culture sector, but when you look at it as an industry sector, arts and culture in Minnesota is a $13.8 billion industry. So now it ranks just below retail, construction, and transportation. And so it's ranking higher than agriculture, forestry, and utilities. So it's a $13.8 billion industry in Minnesota. Now that's a major driver of the state's prosperity. So this impact isn't just in the Twin Cities. More than half of Minnesota's arts and culture organizations are in greater Minnesota. And that's where it's essential to local economies. The Legacy Amendment ensures that funding reaches every corner of the state, supporting theaters, festivals, museums, and community programs that make our rural communities more vibrant and sustainable. And in today's economy, the investment is more important than ever because when small towns thrive culturally, they also thrive economically. A strong arts scene helps local businesses attract workforce talent and keeps main streets alive. It gives young families a reason to stay and new professionals a reason to move in. You know, when we were traveling the state, we went with the State Arts Board. We traveled with all the local regional arts councils. And we talked to so many communities along the way. We actually we went 2,000 miles around the state, which, again, I really didn't know how that was possible because the state doesn't seem that big, but we kind of zigzagged our way around to every community we could find. And when we sat down and talked with communities about the impact of legacy, so many people came to us with things that we didn't really think that we were going to find. And when we sat down and talked with people, they said, you know what, we're here from a local hospital. And we said, well, why? Why are you here today? You might be in the wrong room. But in reality, what they said to us was, you know what, when doctors come to us and say, well, why should I move here? They say, one of their first questions is, why should I move here? Like, what is there to do? And so one of the first calls we make is to our local arts council and say, well, give us a list of some of the things happening. And it's because they want to move to cities where there are things to do. They want to move to a town where they can say, great, I can go out for dinner with my wife and I can go to a theater, I can go to a show afterwards. Or I finally got Timmy to play his trombone. I want him to keep up with his lessons. They want things to do. They don't want to move to a town where the last restaurant is going to close. If you want a restaurant to keep moving, you make sure that you've got a theater next door that's going to keep it open. And so all of those things create this vibrancy in downtowns. And when you're trying to hire nurses and teachers and you're trying to get all of this critical staff, you need a thriving heart of towns across the state. The arts also are solving real-world problems. It's combating isolation and mental health challenges. The arts are bringing people together and strengthening social connections and reducing isolation and growing crisis, especially in rural areas. I know, being from a small town, I'm from Glenwood, Minnesota, over by Alexandria, and that's something that we see all the time is people that are living alone in some of these rural areas and saying, this is the place where I find connection. I have a place to go. I have something to do with my neighbors and friends so that I don't feel isolated where I live. We also see it improving healthcare outcomes. The arts are helping veterans heal from PTSD, improving mobility for patients with Parkinson's, offering essential creative outlets for those struggling with mental health challenges. Their healthcare providers are increasingly recognizing the arts as a tool for healing, improving patient outcomes, and even reducing healthcare costs. It's also, again, building those communities for workforce retention. In so many towns, when things are starting to stop after 5 o'clock, which is okay sometimes, I like to be done by 5 o'clock too. But investing in the arts, again, mean creating vibrant downtowns with theaters, music venues, and gathering places. So again, we all know that economic impact is probably the most exciting thing anyone will talk about today. But I just want to reiterate that the work that you do here today and the work of the arts and culture community is a proven investment in our economy, our communities, and our people. And the work that you do supporting the arts through the Legacy Amendment is not just about funding creativity, it's about strengthening Minnesota's workforce, driving economic growth, and ensuring that our state remains a national leader in arts, culture, and innovation. So thank you so much for your time and for your leadership and continued commitment to the future of Minnesota. So of course, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for testifying today. Are there any questions from members? Senator Johnson Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have a question, but I just want to affirm what you have to say. And I really appreciate that you brought this. There's so many intangible benefits to having a vibrant arts community in a town or a neighborhood. And, it's hard to quantify the value of those intangible benefits of vibrancy and community and fellowship and joy. But to have it before us in terms of actual economic impact and jobs, I think that's really important. So I just want to thank you for this. And it's absolutely needed and something that I think it's difficult to quantify on some of the soft things in life, but it's a really good approach to showing the value. So I appreciate that you brought that for us. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and thank you, Senator Johnson Stewart, for those comments as well. Those are kind of what I was thinking as well. We often don't understand what the dollars are behind it, and you kind of tried to undersell it a little bit, but it was honestly probably the best thing you could do for us was give us this data, because I didn't know the dollars that were behind it, and it's actually very helpful to have that piece of it to understand the economic impact. We don't typically deal with the economics as much on this committee, but it is extremely helpful. So thank you for doing that and sharing that piece with us today. So thanks again for coming, and with that, we will move on to the next presentation from the Minnesota Historical Society.
Thank you.
Welcome to the committee. I know you guys know the drill. And if you guys know anything about who bought the ruby slippers, I'm still trying to figure that out. So maybe you guys can help with that. No? Well, we'll keep trying. Just go ahead and you guys know the drill. State your name for the record, and then just go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Chair Icorn and Chair Herr and members of the committee. Oh, I see Chair Herr has stepped out, but members of the committee, we are grateful for the opportunity to present today on the accomplishments made possible by Legacy Amendment History Fund dollars and History Communities, and then we'll talk a little bit about the History Communities request. With me, our colleagues from the Minnesota Historical Society. To my right is David Kelleher, the Vice President for Public Policy and Government Relations. To my left is Avi Vishwanathan, who's our Executive Vice President for Mission Delivery. And behind us is Carolyn Vieser-Egbede. She is the grants manager, and so that may be a phone a friend moment later on. We'll just see. But again, thank you so much for the opportunity to share today about the impact of these history funds, and then to talk a little bit about the request. I hope by now most of you have received the most recent legacy report for Minnesota history. And if you haven't received a hard copy of that, let us know. We'll get that into your hands. I will just quickly point out a few statistics in our at a glance page in that report. For about $3 per Minnesotan, we are able to provide a wide range of history activities that we will talk about today. And I won't go into great detail, but to kind of stay on a theme that was introduced in the previous testimony, we do have a 100% return on investment. For every History Legacy Fund dollar invested, Minnesota receives a $2 return on that investment, which obviously directly impacts our state and local economies. So we're also proud of not only the quality of life and educational impact, but the economic impact that support of Minnesota history through legacy funds has. We do not do this work alone. There is a coalition, a Minnesota History Coalition, and you see the list of partners, many of which were with us last Thursday for our 19th annual History Matters Day at the Capitol. So we had about 100 folks from across the state advocating with us, and so we are grateful for the partnership that's represented on that slide. And with that, I will turn things over to my colleague, David Kelleher, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'm David Kelleher, Minnesota Historical Society. And again, thanks for giving us an opportunity to talk a little bit about history, legacy activities. The slide up on the screen right now gives you a broad overview of how we do this work in the history area. And we start with the language in the Minnesota Constitution in the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, part of the amendment, that says to preserve Minnesota's history and cultural heritage. And we think that's pretty cool that the words Minnesota history are in the Constitution, and that guides the work that we do. The appropriations that you make have been broken up into 5 groupings or 5 buckets that you can see in your handout, but maybe not up on the screen. Heritage grants, statewide programs, history partnerships, statewide survey of archaeological and historic sites, and Minnesota Digital Library. And we'll spend a couple of minutes on each one of those. The slide up on the screen now gives you a snapshot of the previous biennium's appropriations for each of those areas. We'll start out with with grants, and I'll spend a couple of minutes talking about some features of the grants program, sort of the what, and then because there's been a lot of attention paid to grants this year, we'll talk a little bit more about how we do our grants process. And you've heard from Humanities and the Arts Board how they do grants. I think the concepts are the same. We do things a little bit differently in each of our work, but the general concepts are similar throughout. Important to say that this historical and cultural heritage grants program is a competitive grants program. We have a citizen review committee, the Historic Resources Advisory Committee. These are volunteers who review the grants and make decisions over the life of the legacy amendment. They have made decisions on over 3,400 grants in all 87 counties. And these grants are for history programs, things like museum collections and environments and preserving historic structures. We break this into two groupings: small grants under $10,000 and under, and large grants over $10,000. The small grants are available in 3 to 4 rounds each year, and the large grants are available once each year. And next couple of slides, the words are the same, but the pictures are different, with a couple of examples of grants that have been done on historic structures. Again, the Historic Resources Advisory Committee brings their expertise in their fields to the conversation to review grants. They are experts, and this is in the language in the appropriation language that you have passed, to ask us to organize a group with expertise in historic preservation, local history, archaeology, and archival programs. In 2024, the Historic Resources Advisory Committee members volunteered 500 plus hours. They work off of a paperless application system, and you can see them at work doing their deliberations, looking at a big spreadsheet up on the screen. They score each of the applications and make their decisions based on those scores. This slide shows, and these are replicated in the booklet that Kent mentioned a couple of minutes ago, and behind the tab marked grants, you've got maps that show the grants that have been made over time across the state on maps, and they're shown a couple of different ways. One is they're all by county, and it's shown the number of grants within each county, and then the dollar value per capita by county. As mentioned, grants have gone to all 87 counties, to nearly 1,000 different organizations across the state. We've administered just about $83 million in grants since the start of the Legacy Amendment. And the demand for grants significantly exceeds the funds that are available. The competition is probably a good thing, because we get the projects that are ready to go, and our grants office staff provides assistance that I'll talk about in a couple of minutes. Again, that was the products of the grants program, and I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes about the how and how we do this work. This gives a generic look at the life of starting with an idea that someone may have to do a history-related project, and shows how they start by talking to the grants office at the Minnesota Historical Society, making their application, and for the large grants, a mandatory pre-application that gets reviewed by staff and peer reviewers, and then the decision-making, the deliberation that the Historic Resources Advisory Committee does, and then final approval by the Minnesota Historical Society's governing board, the Executive Council, and then finally a grant agreement that clearly spells out what is going to be accomplished with that project and ongoing monitoring. One of the ways that potential grant applicants can learn about what the expectations are and what the possibilities are is through our grants manual. This is available online. It's very detailed. hopefully is not very intimidating for the first-time user, but it does spell out what the expectations are with a glossary of terms and some very specific sections on financial requirements and reporting and record keeping. What we do to help potential grantees and applicants and those who have been awarded grants is having workshops for folks who are interested in applying for a grant, having a seminar for successful applicants. I mentioned the grants manual, doing site visits for grants that are over a certain level, and then ongoing help for successful grantees. On the ongoing monitoring that we do for grants that are over $50,000, that requires a site visit or a presentation, depending on what the work product is. If it's a historic building or if it's an exhibit, we might require photos of the final work product. We require reporting before payment is made, and there's for each type of grant, there's a percentage that's held back before the final payment is made so that we can see what has been done for the work. With that, Mr. Chair, we'll move on to the next part of the how these funds are organized, statewide programs operated by the Minnesota Historical Society.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to just say a few words about the statewide programming. These programs are administered by the Minnesota Historical Society. Another way to look at this work is, well, actually, let me go to the mission statement. Any of the programming developed at the Minnesota Historical Society is going to be guided by this statement. And there are many very important words in this mission statement. I would say all is a very compelling term and certainly guides our aspirations. And curiosity is also a key to people really engaging with their own story and with our state's history. The strategic imperatives that you see are the key components of a 5-year strategic plan that MNHS is in the midst of. We're about 3.5 years into this, and you'll see the concepts that I think are important to this body based on the legislation in the last session regarding legacy. There was a lot of talk about access, and we are focused on access. We're talking about sharing expertise and authority, sustainability. That blend of public-private support, earned income is also key to our work. So just wanted to provide the context of our strategic imperatives. And one other way to look at the statewide programming is preserving, sharing, and connecting. There is some overlap, but often our statewide programs will fall into at least one or sometimes more of those 3 categories. So just to give you a couple of high-level examples, preserving. Minnesota is a leader in terms of newspaper digitization. We've got nearly 7 million pages of Minnesota newspaper digitized and fully accessible on our digital newspaper hub. Oral histories and archaeological collections are also positively impacted by our preserving statewide programming. If you think about this work through the lens of sharing, you tend to think about maybe our exhibition programs. And just a couple of highlights. That's an image from our Then Now Wow exhibit at the History Center, which is aimed at school-age children. But I think about other new exhibits that have come online, and there's an image from Fort Snelling. We have a new exhibition there. Many voices, many stories, one voice. That exhibition tells military stories, indigenous stories, and really puts that historic site in important historical context through the lens of just a variety of Minnesotans. If we look at the other category, well, actually, this would continue with sharing, and there are images here from the We Are Hmong exhibition and Somali Plus Minnesota exhibit. Both were at the History Center in recent years. And then here's an image from our installation that's entitled Our Home, Native Minnesota. If you've seen this exhibition before, I'd encourage you to come back and see it again. We have just rotated a new series of artifacts to enhance the exhibition. So if you think you've seen it once, we encourage you to come back and see different artifacts that reinforce this and so many of the other stories we tell. The third bucket or category, lens through which we think about statewide programming, is connecting. And here you'll see a lot of emphasis on our educational work, certainly K-12, our work with teachers, legacy field trip support, and also programs that we have designed to reach high school and college interns, and also museum fellows, trying to develop the next generation of public history professionals. And then just a few more images, but I'll particularly point out our horse program, and you will encounter that at several of our sites, Oliver Kelly Farm in Elk River, or Forest History Center in Grand Rapids, but that adds another dimension to the history experiences that we're able to present through our legacy programs. And that's another image from Fort Snelling, the exhibit I referenced previous few slides back.
Mr. Chair, in the last legacy appropriations bill in 2003, you included language that encouraged all of us to work harder at access to our programs to all Minnesotans. And we have taken, here's the language, you're familiar with this, but just for everyone's reference, we've taken that to heart and done a few things that we had on the drawing board for a number of years. We joined a national program called Museums for All that is organized by the federal agency, the Institute for Museum and Library Services. They provide marketing for this program and a portal where people from anywhere can learn about how they can gain access to museums across the country to ensure that an admission fee is not a barrier. We have added 4 free days across the Historic Sites Network, History Center as well, and then free Thursday evenings at the History Center to just make sure that funding, paying for admission, we wish we didn't have to charge admission, but it's a reality, a fact of life, but making sure that that's not a barrier for people to visit. Mr. Chair, a couple other categories. The history partnership category is a way for organizations to work together on a history project to share resources or expertise, and there are a number of examples in the booklet, and I will buzz through this pretty quickly. The statewide survey of historical and archaeological sites provides an opportunity to learn more about archaeology across the state. And you see a couple of examples of the cataloging. The Minnesota Digital Library, collaboration between Minnesota Historical Society, Minitex, and other history partners provides history resources through the digital portal that MDL does.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you. I'm going to just take a few minutes to talk about a specific grant program that we had last year that was also in the same legislation that David had referenced, and that was for issuing grants, $400,000 worth of grants to commemorate 50 years of Southeast Asians in Minnesota. That grant program had over $2 million in requests for $400,000 that were appropriated. That was 37 applications. Ultimately, 11 grants were selected. That ended up being the most selective grant process that we have at the Minnesota Historical Society, with around 25% of the dollars that were requested actually being able to give grants in that, and then under 30% of the organizations were funded. In addition to those 11 grantees, we used, as David referenced earlier, statewide history partnership funds to fund 3 other organizations that we felt like the work needed to happen, but those organizations weren't quite ready for grants. So we did form them as partnerships. That's another roughly $100,000 that we were able to add. And the advantage of doing them as partnerships gives us the chance to engage more directly with the organization and to support them through their work to make sure that those are going to be successful. Those grants include Hmong, Lao, Vietnamese, and Cambodian organizations to support those communities. And in addition to that work, we also will be supporting SGU Hmong veterans in an event that they are having in the near future as well.
So, Mr. Chair, toward the end of the presentation that you all have before you, you see the formal request for FY26 and 27 from MNHS and our partners in Minnesota History. You'll once again see those 5 buckets, if you will, and I'll just go through those biennial totals. The historic and cultural grants, the competitive grants, we're requesting $26 million for the biennium. Statewide history programs, the same amount, $26 million for the biennium. History partnerships, the request is $7.5 million for the biennium. Statewide survey of historical and archaeological sites is $1 million. And Minnesota Digital Library for the biennium, the request is $1 million. And this is based on estimates from the November forecast, and this would be 33% of the Arts, Cultural, and Heritage Fund. With that, we are ready to stand for questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Members, any questions? Senator Herr?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and also thank you, Mr. Avi, for sharing with us or update us on the Southeast Asian grant anniversary of 50 years. That was involving a lot of groups and a lot of people, and everyone want to be inclusive, and that we are having an inclusive method here, but there were people that felt left out, and so I'm glad that you're giving us an update. And so just to clarify, you're putting $300,000 as your partnership grant from the History Center as part of it as well. Am I correct on that?
Mr. Whitworth, or whoever wants to answer?
Probably Avi.
Mr. Chair, Senator Herr, we are adding roughly $175,000. We have committed directly, already have agreements for roughly $100,000 with a Vietnamese, Cambodian, and Lao organizations, and are working with another partnership close to $75,000 with the SGU Veterans Organization.
Thank
Senator.
you. Yep. Thank you very much, and I'm glad we're taking that step so that everybody are included. I know that the SGU and a few other communities were here to testify, and the SGU did testify quite a bit. And in many cases, when people come testify and we publicize out there, not necessarily they get the grant, but it would be better that they're part of the people that are the recipient that have a chance to receive the grant too. I commend those that come testify for the greater benefit for all, but sometimes it's good to have those that come testify have a chance of the pie as well. It looks like you're communicating with me that the Lao community are going to receive some of the funding, the Vietnamese community, as well as the Cambodian and the SGU. So sounds good. Just one more thing to ask. Do you need more funding toward that route?
Mr. Whitworth?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Herr, I think it's safe to say we would always be open to more funding. And as my colleague, Mr. Viswanathan said, this particular grant program was our most competitive to date. We had almost 4 times as many requests as we were able to provide grants, and about 30% of the funding. Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else, Senator Herr?
No, that's good enough. Thank you.
Senator Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my comment is the same as the other groups as well. So you're looking for roughly $61.5 million, is that correct?
Mr. Whitworth?
That's the total based on the 33%. And Mr. Chair, Senator Green, that we acknowledge that that is a stretch goal. We have been much closer to the 22 to 24% range, but went ahead and made a stretch request, which is based on 33% of that
Senator
total
Green.
fund.
Okay, so, Mr. Chair, so if the 22 to 33%, so well, just for just raw numbers, what did you get last year?
About
Mr. Whitworth?
37.
Or last
Mr.
biennium,
Chair,
excuse me.
Mr. Chair, Senator Green, I think that for FY '24 and '25, that it totaled about 37 million, if I did my math correctly, a little earlier.
Anything else, Senator Green?
So, no, just a comment. So that's quite a stretch. That's a pretty, I mean, you're stretching really thin there at that amount, so. All right, thank you.
Any additional questions? Not seeing any. Thank you guys for coming. We appreciate you being here to tell us about all the good work you're doing and what you're hoping for this legislative session. With that ends our business for the day, but I will take just about 30 seconds of liberty to remind people that Minnesota Forest Industries is having their day over at CHS Field, and pretty much everything they do touches this committee, and I know they would love the opportunity to talk to us. There's tons of people from all aspects of forest products industries there. So if anybody has an opportunity, they're there until 8 o'clock. And of course, yes, tonight. And we're all welcome to come over there. So I put a flyer on our desks on the floor, but just wanted to get that out there again in case somebody forgot and had an opportunity to head over there. It's a good opportunity to hear from them. So with that, there is no additional business to come before the committee. Thank you, Senator Herr, for giving me the opportunity to continue this bipartisanship. I really appreciate that. And with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you.